Nearly 7 years ago, my family completely cut me off and forced me out of our home. At the time, I was only 22 and not financially secure enough to rent my own place. The suddenness of it all left me unprepared, both mentally and financially. The root of the problem was my sister, Hannah, who is 37 now. We've never been close due to our significant age difference. When she was 27, she married Pete, her boyfriend of 3 years. Their marriage lasted 3 years before ending in divorce, with Hannah accusing Pete of having an affair with one of my friends. After college, I started working and lived with my parents to save money before moving out. They were fine with this arrangement until my sister announced her divorce. She came home one day in tears, claiming Pete had been cheating on her for 6 months with my friend Emily. Emily, who was 28 and trying to gain weight, had consulted Pete as a dietitian, an introduction I facilitated. I was shocked by Hannah's accusations because I knew Emily to be a good person and doubted Pete's infidelity. However, my parents instantly sided with Hannah, believing her without question despite her lack of proof. They chose their daughter over their son-in-law, which I can't fault them for. What I couldn't understand was why they then kicked me out solely based on Hannah's word. She threw a tantrum, convinced my parents I had ruined her marriage by introducing Emily to Pete, and they agreed with her without hesitation. I was devastated and tried desperately to reason with my parents, but they wouldn't listen. They gave me an ultimatum: leave voluntarily or be forced out. In just one day, I lost my family and my home. I sat sobbing on the sidewalk with all my belongings for an hour before gathering myself and seeking refuge at a friend's house for the night. For days, I tried to reach my parents, but they ignored me. Thankfully, my friend allowed me to stay until I found my own place. Unfortunately, my parents firmly believed I was to blame for the divorce. They expressed disgust towards me, despite the fact that I had not been involved in Pete's infidelity. They blocked my calls and threatened to involve the police when I visited them. I finally realized they were serious and actually blamed me. It didn't surprise me, though, as my sister had always been the favored child. Growing up, I was used to being sidelined, but I never expected it to escalate like this. Looking back, I should have seen it coming, but who could predict such a betrayal? Cut off from my family and unable to contact Pete or Hannah, who had both moved away, I had no choice but to approach Emily, my last hope for answers. Despite not being close, I met with her and explained the situation. She vehemently denied the affair, stating she had only met Pete professionally a few times. Emily couldn't understand why Hannah would make such false accusations against her. Emily's assurance that she had a steady relationship and upcoming wedding plans provided convincing evidence that contradicted Hannah's claims. Despite this, I lacked concrete proof to challenge my family's beliefs or to reconcile with them. At the time, I desperately wanted to return home, missing my family despite their actions. Over time, however, I found ways to cope and move forward. I focused on my job and maintaining my own place, using these responsibilities to distract myself and pay the bills. Though I was hurting, I knew I had to keep moving forward, with or without my family's support. Years have passed, and my life has improved significantly. I moved to a larger apartment and got engaged to my girlfriend of 2 years. About a week ago, our engagement post unexpectedly changed everything for me. Shortly after posting, I received an email out of the blue that not only revealed the truth behind Hannah's divorce, but also provided concrete evidence. The catalyst for this revelation was a photo from our engagement that my fiancée Lisa shared on her Facebook, reaching a wider audience beyond her usual Instagram posts. Coincidentally, my ex-brother-in-law Pete saw the post on Facebook. Lisa had met Pete at a seminar, added him on Facebook, and he stumbled upon my profile. Pete, wanting to reach out discreetly, sent me an anonymous email to avoid any awkwardness since several years had passed since his divorce. He felt hesitant about reopening old wounds after initially blocking me. The email contained shocking details. Hannah had been cheating on Pete with a friend of mine, Frank, the cashier from a grocery store near Hannah's house. This was a complete surprise to me as I had never seen them together. Hannah falsely blamed Pete for the affair and accused me of orchestrating it all by introducing her to Frank and suggesting they collaborate musically. This revelation turned everything on its head. Frank, upon learning the truth, was furious and cut ties with my entire family, admitting now that his reaction was rash. The email provided closure and vindication after years of confusion and estrangement. Frank's initial reaction, fueled by anger, led him to act hastily without much thought. He admitted this to me in person, explaining that he had been so enraged that he didn't carefully consider his actions. The email he sent was intentionally impersonal to avoid being traced back to him, but I eventually deduced his involvement. The email contained compelling proof, screenshots of emails between my sister and Frank, discussing their deceitful plans to deceive Pete and expressing their love for each other. Hannah's use of her middle name in the emails left no room for denial. I realized it must have been Pete who sent me this eye-opening email after examining Liza's Facebook friends list and finding him there. Upon connecting with Pete, we met recently and he disclosed that he learned the truth from Emily, who he had met a few years back. Emily, unaware of my perspective due to my request for confidentiality, ultimately enlightened Pete about the divorce. Pete expressed regret for not reaching out to me sooner, citing his discomfort with the situation. Despite Pete's occasional embarrassment, I forgave him as I needed his support to confront my sister. Hannah had manipulated our parents for financial support during her divorce and scapegoated me to divert attention from her infidelity. She was selfishly dishonest, knowing that revealing the truth to our parents would jeopardize her position. I was appalled that someone, especially a family member, could be so deceitful and self-serving. Hannah's lies had been swallowed by our parents, and she never bothered to correct the record. Now armed with undeniable proof, I was determined to expose her deceit and bring justice to the situation she had unjustly inflicted upon me. Years had passed without visiting my family, so I wasn't sure if they still lived in the same house. Thankfully, an old neighbor confirmed their whereabouts, including the fact that Hannah was still residing with our parents. This wasn't surprising. Hannah had always preferred a comfortable, chore-free life at our parents' expense. 2 days ago, Pete and I decided to pay them an unannounced visit. My mom opened the door, clearly caught off guard, as we swiftly entered the living room where my dad and Hannah were present. Initially, the atmosphere felt like a reunion, but it quickly soured as my dad threatened to call the police unless we left immediately. I countered by insisting they listen to what we had to say first. My parents appeared bewildered, while Hannah looked visibly uncomfortable and excused herself to her room. Pete proceeded to present divorce documents and screenshots of Hannah and Frank's incriminating emails, while I narrated the true story behind Hannah's deception. We revealed how Hannah had deceitfully framed Pete for infidelity, leading to their divorce. Pete further disclosed that Hannah had to surrender our family heirloom, a diamond ring, as part of the settlement because she couldn't afford the required payment due to her job as a high school teacher. The revelations left my parents horrified, especially learning about the betrayal and manipulation orchestrated by their own daughter. Despite Hannah's attempts to deny and cover up the truth, she was cornered by the overwhelming evidence. Despite overwhelming evidence against her, my dad promptly kicked Hannah out. He packed her belongings and handed them to her, then ordered all of us to leave their house. I wasted no time and left with Pete, while my sister desperately pleaded with our parents to let her back in, mirroring the situation I faced years ago. It felt like karma at its finest, and I couldn't have been happier about the outcome. It's been a couple of days since then, and Hannah showed up at my place a few hours ago, demanding that I reconcile with our parents immediately. I was unsure how she found me, but I made it clear that I owed her nothing. She had ruined my life once, so I repaid the favor, and now we were even. Hannah broke down into tears and accused me of being a monster, but I remained unmoved by her theatrics. I closed the door on her and focused on my music, blocking out the drama. Eventually, she left, leaving a bitter message on my door calling me a revengeful monster. I don't see anything wrong with my actions and feel no remorse. Hannah seems convinced that I'm the villain, but I simply confronted her lies and deceit, unlike her manipulative behavior towards me in the past. What do you all think? Was I justified in exposing my sister's lies and getting her kicked out 7 years after she falsely accused me of causing her divorce? Despite a week passing since Hannah was kicked out, she continues to bother me incessantly. Today alone, she called me 14 times until I finally had to threaten involving the police for her to stop. I'm not sure how she got my phone number and address, but I'm not particularly concerned about that at the moment. Hannah is attempting to evoke sympathy from me, claiming that a school teacher's salary isn't enough to sustain her. However, I believe she's simply upset about having to find her own place and cover her expenses now that our parents have cut her off. Frankly, I don't feel sorry for her. In case you're wondering, yes, I've blocked her number multiple times, but she seems to be getting around it by having her friends add me to conference calls. As for my parents, they're just as bad, if not worse, than Hannah. They found me on Facebook, saw my engagement post, and suddenly want to be part of my life again. They even express a desire to attend my wedding, despite not having apologized for their actions. I find it baffling that they have the audacity to make such requests, but I'm choosing not to engage with them. Lisa and I have been amused by their texts, as it's difficult to believe they're serious. The situation is rather sad for them, but I'm focused on moving forward with my life without their interference. Hannah once again showed up at my house, despite my warning of reporting her for harassment. I was getting ready to leave for work when she dramatically threw herself across the hood of my car, refusing to move until I spoke with her. Frustrated, I ended up calling the police this time. They took her away while she screamed and cried, attempting to portray me as the villain. However, her theatrics didn't sway anyone, and after pressing charges, I left for work to avoid letting the incident ruin my day. As expected, my parents bailed her out, reinforcing their biased favoritism towards her. They then sent me a lengthy text, humorously justifying their actions as an honest mistake, made nearly a decade ago. It was absurd, considering the deliberate cruelty I endured from both my sister and parents. They were fully aware of their actions and the impact on my life. In response, I texted back, asserting that they lost any right to dictate my choices years ago, and they should stop deluding themselves. I haven't yet blocked them because I haven't had the chance to check my messages thoroughly, but I plan to do so soon to sever ties with my toxic family for good. I returned home from work and checked my social media, only to find another lengthy message from my parents. Lisa and I read it together, both amused by their delusional words. It's comical how they still believe we're a family and expect me to reconcile with them after all they've done. They proudly announced that they've taken Hannah back in and declared that both their children deserve a second chance. As if I had ever been in the wrong. While they welcomed my sister back, they assumed Lisa and I would join them for dinner to sort out our differences before the wedding. It's bold of them to assume I want them at my wedding at all. Lisa and I had a good laugh at their message before I firmly responded that I have no interest in anything they've invited us to. I made it clear that I've been fine without them for the past 7 years and don't need or want their forgiveness or presence in my life. I blocked them for good, no longer finding their attempts amusing. I'm content with Lisa as my family now. My parents and sister have always been self-centered, and I doubt they'll ever change. If they try to contact me again, they'll be hearing from my lawyer. I've moved on and won't allow them to disrupt my life any further.